Hi, I'm Maren and welcome back to my channel, Maren Makes It. Today I'm here to tell you guys the story of how I went to visit Carlsbad Caverns. If you don't know what Carlsbad Caverns is, it's a big national park where there's a famous cave that's located in the southeast corner of New Mexico. So the trip basically went something like this. I started in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I was living at the time. Then I went to the San Antonio area where I have family that I wanted to go visit. And then I would go back to Carlsbad Caverns, kind of take a long way home and do a little bit of solo adventuring on my way back to Santa Fe. And while at first this might not sound like a lot of driving because you are only going through 2 states of New Mexico and Texas the entire time, this whole round trip ends up being over 1,000 miles because Texas and New Mexico are honestly just enormous states and you can drive for hours and not even leave the state the entire time. As somebody who grew up on the East Coast, I still find this fascinating every time I re-realize it. This video is going to be a little bit different than other content I've posted in the past on my channel because I've never really taken you guys exploring to any particular place with me. This was actually when I was originally thinking about starting a YouTube channel. I filmed this footage, so I'm going to be using that. I figured I'd just use the driving time here in order to tell you guys a little bit of the history of this trip. And then I got some really cool footage of the caverns to show you a little bit later on in this video. So after driving this huge distance to Texas, I got to spend a few days with family there before I had to head back to New Mexico. On my way back, I stopped at Carlsbad Caverns. This was before my car camping days, so I did have a hotel overnight here. So I stayed overnight in the town of Carlsbad, New Mexico. The town of Carlsbad felt like a little oasis in the middle of the desert, honestly, because there's a river going through there, which I didn't realize. And I think it's dammed because there was a really cute area to kind of walk around at the riverfront, and people were even swimming there, which I was surprised to see because water recreation sports are really hard to find in New Mexico, let me tell you. Carlsbad has about 30,000 people, which is kind of small, but big for New Mexico. It actually makes it the 11th most populated city in New Mexico. And what I did the next morning when I woke up is I woke up at 5, I worked till 11, which is when the checkout time was to the hotel, so they kicked me out, and then I went to head to the caverns. Carlsbad Caverns has been on my bucket list for a long time, ever since I heard of it as a kid, and so I am excited to get to go there. We are here! So I made it to the visitor center for Carlsbad Caverns. I drove about 7 miles from the park entrance to the top of the hill here, and you're kind of driving up a switchback hill the entire time to get up here. So I just went in the visitor center and I got all the information. So they said there's 2 ways to get down into the main cavern. So one is an elevator down, and the other one you can walk down so you can see more of the cave. And they said if you're going to do the approach to walk down, you want to plan about 2.5 to 3 hours for the whole thing. So I'm super excited. I'm just going to have a little lunch in the car before I go down there. It's pretty hot outside. It's like 87 degrees or something, but in the cavern it's like normally 50 to 60 degrees. So you definitely want to bring a sweatshirt, even if it's one of those days where, you know, you'd think you don't need to. I'm in a long sleeve right now. It's like a thin mesh one, but it's a little hot right now, but I think I'll be happy to have it later on. So you need to go through the visitor center and out a path at the back of the visitor center if you're planning to walk down into the cave. This way we can get to the cave entrance. And I'll just stop talking now and let you enjoy the beautiful footage of this amazing place. So where you see the lines here, that's the railings for this sort of switchback down into a deeper part of the cave. Some parts of the cave were honestly so dark, it was very difficult to see anything at all. And there were definitely sections where I had to duck my head or really kind of squeeze through in order to keep going on the path. After some of these darker and more narrow sections, it would kind of open up into a bigger chamber or room. Eventually, the path that I was on joined up with where people who caved down the elevator would end up. You can see, based on the amount of space they have here for people to wait in line, that it must be jam-packed full sometimes. I was here on a random weekday though in May, so I think I got pretty lucky with basically having the cave to myself. You really had like 360 views the entire time, with stalagmites and stalactites coming from all sides. The ceiling often looked like just a ton of icicles, and then underneath you'd look down and there'd be water running under you. It was amazing. While Carlsbad is not the deepest, longest, or biggest cave, it is supposed to be one of the most decorated in the world with so many different rock structures. Also, this is by no means a small cave just because it doesn't set any records. There's over 30 miles of main cavern here, about 3 of which you can walk through as a regular visitor. But 30 miles is crazy to me because that means you could run a marathon and then some and still not be through the entire cavern. I just spent about 4 hours in Carlsbad Caverns. It's crazy. It's like 95 out and the caverns are like 50 degrees. So you come out and you're kind of shivering, and it's like that cold, wet feeling where almost like it sucks the life out of you, and it's dark too. It's a little bit spooky, and then you get out here and it's like roasting and the sun is just shining so bright. So it's kind of like such a crazy contrast. Definitely like it feels kind of devoid of life there. Like the way that the like stalactites and stalagmites are, like some of them remind me actually of ocean creatures, which is really cool, like jellyfish and coral and stuff. I think the coolest part about that is that this used to be a actual reef. Like this used to be like a prehistoric ocean. They're not fossilized reefs, they're just rock formations, but they kind of happen to look that way. And I think it's interesting how nature creates things that are different, like one is alive and one isn't, but in similar patterns, if that makes sense. I've noticed that in other areas as well. I think that's really interesting. Down there, really the only colors are like, you know, the colors of rock and like blackness. And it's almost like you're in like a black and white world is what it felt like to me. You feel like you're in somebody else's dream. Like the regular world is just gone. Light doesn't come from above. The cold starts to really just like get to you, like get into your bones by the end. Like my teeth were chattering and I just felt really like, I don't know, like something was like sucked out of me. Like the other thing is, it's just really hard to process the scale. Like I'm trying to take pictures to show like friends and family and you guys, of course, but like there's nothing for reference of scale, and it like almost looks like an optical illusion or like a piece of modern art, those pictures. You just can't tell, like, is this 1 inch big or like 1 foot big, like, or like 100 feet big? Even while you're in there, you like the pictures don't do it justice, but even while you're in there, it's really hard to process, like, how far away is that? Like, how big is this? The third thing I wanted to say was the silence. It is so quiet down there. Like people's footsteps and like people talking definitely echoes, but when you're like in a section where there's nobody with you, like it's just dead silence. Whether you live in the city or the country, it's just like a different kind of silence. It's so permanent feeling, and I think that adds to like almost like the creepiness of it. Structures, the rock structures kind of remind me of like organs, or like the piano type organ, not like organs inside your body. Although actually somebody I ran into that I started talking to in there said that this reminded them of like almost like a journey through like the organs of like a crazy animal or something. Like that's how they were describing it, which I thought was really interesting. I kind of thought, okay, I'm in somebody else's dream world. I think that's because it was reminding me of Meow Wolf in Santa Fe. Never been there. That's a really cool experience as well. It's kind of like an Alice in Wonderland interactive art experience, I guess is the way to describe it best. This was like Meow Wolf, but not colorful, like black and white Meow Wolf. I don't know, that's a kind of a good way to describe it. It's hard to describe. It's overwhelming because it just reminds you, like, one, how cool nature is, two, like how sad I am that like we're destroying this planet, and three, just like the joy of exploring new places. And like one of the signs said in the cave, like there's really not that many frontiers left for humans to explore. Like we've really explored a lot, and the ocean floor, the underground, and space are really 3 of the frontiers left and areas that we haven't really explored yet. So obviously this cave has been partially explored, but they're still doing ongoing exploration and finding things that they have never known about before. And it is just exciting to me that there's still something left like that. I definitely highly recommend Carlsbad Caverns if you are in the southern New Mexico, western Texas area ever. It is 100% worth it. So after spending 4 hours at the caverns, it was already pretty late in the afternoon, but I still had to drive back to Santa Fe. And because I had driven an extra half an hour south to get to the caverns, it was going to be an extra half an hour now again on my drive too. So I think it ended up being like 5 hours of driving to do still in the night, which after getting up to work was a very long day. And I definitely learned a lesson here, and that is that you can't have a long driving day, have an adventure day, and a work day all three in one. Like, you can pick two of those things, but you definitely can't do all three every day. It's a little bit different in this kind of a trip because this trip was like, I would get back to my apartment and just sort of crash there. When you're trying to travel full time for a prolonged period of time while you're working, you really have to focus a lot more on like, how do I make this sustainable? Because you definitely can't live every day like a 12-hour jam-packed day the way that I did this day. So I definitely learned an important lesson here, and something that everybody who is traveling with a remote job should keep in mind. You guys have to let me know, like, do you like this kind of video? Do you want me to take you on more adventures? Do you prefer more of like the how-to kind of videos? Do you want more beauty content, more travel content? I feel like I have so many interests that I don't even know what to start making videos about sometimes, because I have such a long list in my phone of video ideas, honestly. But I also want to make videos that you guys like watching, so please let me know what you guys would like to see more of in the future. As always, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. Bye, YouTube!